American Military University proudly presents Mission San Diego Military, produced by the San Diego Military Advisory Council and Cloudcast Media. San Diego is America's finest military city. From the Marines and Navy to the Coast Guard and Naval Special Warfare, San Diego is a proud military town. Mission San Diego Military will help you better understand how the San Diego military leads, innovates, and cares for community and country. Mission San Diego Military, co-hosted by the CEO of the San Diego Military Advisory Council, retired Rear Admiral David Boone, and Drew Schlossberg with Cloudcast Media, begins right now.
I'm Drew Schlossberg of Cloudcast Media and co-host of Mission San Diego Military, a podcast generously sponsored by American Military University, a leader in educating our military and their families since 1993. My co-host is David Boone. He's the president and CEO of the San Diego Military Advisory Council, better known as SDMAC. David is a retired Navy Rear Admiral, and the Mission San Diego Military Podcast series is produced by Cloudcast Media. And David Boone, as we always do, please do the honors in introducing our guest.
Well, thanks, Drew. It's great to be with you again for another show. We got a superb guest today. Rear Admiral Cavanaugh is a submariner. So I'm going to, for the audience, it's not submariner, it's submariner. Okay, so we got to get that cleared up right from the get-go. But Admiral Cavanaugh is a 1993 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He has a graduate degree in nuclear engineering from Cal Berkeley, and that's my alma mater too. And
Go Bears.
A graduate degree in foreign affairs from Catholic University, and then has spent a career in the submarine force. He commanded Submarine Squadron 11 right here in San Diego, and is now commander of Submarine Pacific, otherwise known as SubPac. So we're really delighted, Admiral, to have you on the show. He, a couple of months ago, was generous enough when he was traveling in San Diego to speak at an SDMAC Speaker Series breakfast. He's stationed, SubPac is headquarters is in Honolulu, Hawaii, so we are remote with him today. But I'm going to turn it over to the Admiral to talk about his organization and what they do. So, sir, over to you.
Hey, well, really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. We're known as the Silent Service, but I really look forward to telling your viewers and listeners kind of what we do here in the Submarine Force. So, as you said, I currently serve as the commander of the Pacific Submarine Force. I have a counterpart who's a 3-star in the Atlantic, and together we're the Submarine Force commander and deputy commander. Most of my focus and bandwidth is dedicated to building readiness. We call that force generation. So manning, training, equipping submarine crews and other undersea forces to get them ready to deploy. I also have some responsibility for force development, tactical development, providing input on new capabilities, and I'm happy to talk about some of those. And then I have some operational responsibilities here in Third Fleet, where I work for Admiral Wade, the Third Fleet commander, as Task Force 34, the Theater Undersea Warfare commander for this particular part of the world. But again, most of it is the type commander responsibility of generating readiness. San Diego is a really special place for me and for my family. We were stationed here multiple times. In fact, all of my experiences in the Pacific, either in San Diego or Hawaii, with some shore duties, as you mentioned, in Washington, D.C. and other places. My daughter's a graduate of Point Loma High School, for example. So, San Diego is a special place for us. The waterfront there is not just a place where the submarines tie up, but it's where we build readiness. It's where we train. It's where we team with industry counterparts and others, and they really become part of the community. And so I'm happy to talk to folks via this format.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Admiral, please.
Yeah, so the submarine force plays a really critical role as part of the joint force. Ballistic missile submarines have about 70% of the nuclear warheads, and those are all of our survivable warheads. In other words, an adversary understands that They can't target those with a first strike, and so they were always susceptible to a second strike. And so that's the foundation of our strategic deterrence. We have guided missile submarines that are converted ballistic missile submarines that have cruise missiles. So think Tomahawks, those pack a really significant punch. And then most of the force is made up of fast attack submarines, and that's where my operational experience is. Those fast attack submarines can do a multitude of missions, all the way from peacetime and competition to crisis or conflict. And what we really bring to the table as part of the joint force is that access anywhere in the maritime domain. We can be on scene but unseen, and really rapidly transition to operations if we need to. And so I guess with that, that's probably a good overview of who we are. And I'll pause for any questions there.
Yeah, I noticed here you took command on April 11, 2025, the 125th anniversary of the U.S. Submarine Force. I will guarantee you, David, I'm sure you knew this. I bet most people would say, what do you mean 125 years? Talk about that.
Well, yeah, so 1900 was the first official year of the submarine force in the U.S. Navy. Wow. When we purchased the Holland. We really, continued through World War I, and then a lot of our really storied history comes from World War II. I am so privileged to have this assignment here at SubPAC, the same building where Charlie Lockwood served during the second half of World War II. We sunk a significant portion, about a third of the warships and over 50% of the merchant fleet in the Pacific, and really had an outsized impact on the conclusion of that war. Nuclear power came along after that, and so that's another hallmark of our submarines. All of our submarines today have nuclear propulsion, which gives us speed. It gives us stealth. We don't have to come up and recharge batteries like diesel electric submarines, and it gives us endurance. We have about 30 years of fuel on board, so effectively unlimited. We're limited really by food. So we make our own water, we can clean the air, make our own oxygen, scrub carbon dioxide out. And so typically we can carry 100 or more days of food out there operating. Submarines were really critical during the Cold War. A lot of the Soviet strategy revolved around their ballistic missile submarines and how they protected them. And thus our undersea forces were really vital to that maritime strategy. And again, today, we have access where, every day as the kind of leading edge of the joint force. So it's a really proud history, and I'm honored to be part of it.
Wow, that's quite a description. I appreciate that. I think our audience would really, are always fascinated about what is it like to live on a submarine, right? Is the deployment several months? Is it 6 months? Is it whatever? How many folks are on a submarine? Maybe decide the type of submarine it is. Can you just give our audience a little bit of an idea of what it's like?
Yeah, so the ballistic missile submarines have two crews. In the Pacific, they're all stationed in Bangor, Washington, and they're typically on a cycle where they'll go out for some period of time, 70 to 90 days, somewhere in that window. They'll come back, they'll do what we call a refit, where they do some maintenance, and then the other crew takes the submarine out for a patrol, and they're able to get a lot of at-sea time with one submarine using those two crews. Our our guided missile submarines rotate crews as well, but they typically do it forward, like a place like Guam, so that the submarine stays deployed and then the crews rotate into the theater. On fast attack submarines, we typically do 6-month deployments. So somewhere on the order of a year to work up and build readiness, and then deploy. In our case, it's typically to the 7th Fleet, which is the Western Pacific area of operations. You're not underway all that time, that entire 6 months, but you'll pull into various port calls and things like that. But it's not uncommon to be underway 60, maybe even up to 90 days at a time. As I said, we have that type of endurance. The crew is on. We've changed it a bit over my time. We used to be in 6-hour watches, but that meant you had effectively an 18-hour day because we only had 3 watch teams. And so every day you were ratcheting back another 6 hours. It turns out that circadian rhythms are pretty important, and that's not very good for you. It took us some time to learn that. So we now do 8-hour watches, again, 3 watch teams, and so you always have watch the same type of day. Some of the crews, interestingly, will swap the meals around, so the same people aren't always eating breakfast or always eating dinner. And some boats will do it a different way, where they'll every week or two they'll rotate watches, so you have a watch during a different part of the day. But in either case, you're in this 3-section rotation where you typically are on watch. And when I say that, you might be a nuclear operator standing at a panel, you might be walking around the engine room, you might be watching a sonar screen, depending on what your specialty is. And then that off-going period, we call it, you probably eat, and then that's when you would clean, do maintenance, training, etc. And then the oncoming watch period is normally when you get some sleep. And so again, the 8-hour rotation gives you a longer period of uninterrupted sleep as well. But you really get into that routine, and it's being in port, there are a lot of distractions, and you get pulled a lot of different ways. We have training facilities, but you're also being part of maintenance and other things, and standing duty. When you're at sea, you get into that rhythm, and you really get very effective at training and drills and things like that. We're always rehearsing, always trying to get better. So that's kind of what that's like. A crew is about 150 people, and so there's some in the tipping point. Gladwell talks about that size of a community where no one's anonymous, everyone has a personal relationship. And I really think that is a kind of a magic number, frankly. The submarine is a real meritocracy. Everybody understands who knows their job really well, who's not putting in 100% effort, and no one's really anonymous. And I think that drives performance. It's a really great culture.
So for our San Diego audience, our submarines in San Diego are at Naval Base Point Loma, and we have 4 fast attack submarines that are home ported here. At any one time, a number of them are deployed, but they're home ported here. So we're very proud to host those submarines here in San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego they're all Los Angeles class. And they are, so out of those 4, 1 or 2 of them would typically be deployed. San Diego is also a unique squadron for a couple other reasons. So there's a floating dry dock in San Diego. You can see it there at Point Loma. It's crewed by sailors. It's the only one in the U.S. Navy that we have like that, that's crewed by sailors, and so that falls under Squadron 11. And also Undersea Rescue Command is a one-of-a-kind capability that we have in the U.S. Navy. In the event of a downed submarine, we can fly this and attach it to mount it essentially on a host ship, a surface ship, we call it a host ship, and we have a capability to go down and extract survivors from that event. In that case, and we can do that anywhere in the world, and any country's submarines, there are some standards, and so that's very unique about Squadron 11.
I'm Drew Schlossberg of Cloudcast Media and co-host of Mission San Diego Military, a podcast series generously sponsored by American Military University, a leader in educating our military and their families since 1993. My co-host is David Boone, President and CEO of the San Diego Military Advisory Council. Honored to have with us Rear Admiral Chris Cavanaugh, Commander, Submarine Force, U.S. Pacific Fleet. Listen, I think it's just fascinating when you hear about what you folks do and how critical you are to the war fighting, and the people that you have on the submarine and safety. Talk about the critical nature of submarines to war fighting.
Yeah, well, like I said, we have access anywhere in that maritime battle space, and so we can be there in day-to-day competition. We can walk that battlefield, so to speak, in places we might have to fight. So it helps us build experience in the environment. It positions us forward when we're deployed like that. So really, a first responders in a maritime environment or conflict would be rotationally deployed submarines, as well as those we have home ported in Guam, which is part of the Pacific Fleet, obviously. And then the rest of the force would follow behind. We can be doing peacetime or competition missions, including things like collecting intelligence, and we can rapidly transition to warfighting. We have the ability to carry special operators on board, so think Navy SEALs. We have the ability to launch Tomahawk land attack missiles, which we've done many times. And then we have advanced capability torpedoes, we call them heavyweight torpedoes, that are pretty impressive as well. So we can take out surface ships or submarines with those torpedoes.
But, in peacetime, the big value is deterrence, right? And because they're the silent service, our adversaries don't know if they're there. And so even if they're not there, they might be there, but they don't know, right? So that's part of the chess match that happens. And even when we don't have a presence in a certain part of the ocean, our adversaries don't know, and they are worried because they don't know. So that's part of the value of the submarine service brings to the fight.
Admiral, you've been involved with this for quite a while. If you can, just talk about the advancement in technologies that are on the submarines from when you started to where it is right now.
So I started on a Los Angeles class fast attack submarine. Those were designed and built in the 70s and 80s to keep up with the strike group, or aircraft carriers specifically. We then built the Seawolf class, which was kind of the pinnacle of the Cold War. The torpedoes room is about double the size of a Los Angeles class. It has 8 torpedo tubes instead of 4. Really impressive, also very expensive. We moved on to the Virginia class, which is more of a multi-mission submarine, the pinnacle of stealth. And we continue to iterate on the Virginia class, and we're continuing to, and then we're designing the SSN next. Ohio class submarines are our SSBNs, and we are, in the next few years, we'll be bringing on the Columbia class or District of Columbia class. That will be the next generation of our ballistic missile submarines. So that's the number one acquisition program in the Department of Defense, again, because of that foundation of strategic deterrence. One of the things that's really new are autonomous and robotic systems. So uncrewed undersea vehicles are something that we're incorporating very rapidly into the fleet now. Those range from extra large, which is, you could think of a mini submarine with its own payload, could be aerial systems, it could be torpedoes, it could be other things. Those will be stationed at Port Hueneme, actually. So again, in Southern California, really, really important location for us. Large diameter UUVs, which can do surveys, protect critical infrastructure, or also can be configured more like a torpedo, all the way to smaller things that either are aerial and can do a number of things from there, or can come out of a torpedo tube and have their own payloads. You think of that as extending the reach of a submarine. So, deeper, maybe farther in, toward the shore, into more contested areas. And so those drones, if you will, are really a vanguard of where we are now as the broader force in the undersea. The other thing that we've, I think, gotten better at over my career is the multi-domain aspect of this, working across all elements of the fleet. If you think about prosecuting or tracking another submarine, there's aircraft involved, potentially surface ships, submarines. And when I started this business, we were sort of the silent service, as you said, the lone wolf. We've gotten much more integrated with the fleet and even the joint force over my time. And so the communications are there, the tactics, techniques, and procedures are there. And so those are a couple areas where I think we've really moved out. And of course, our weapons have gotten better.
From your role, I think you said the majority of your time is spent in your role as to man, train, and equip. What are some of the challenges with that, and how do you see that moving forward?
So the industrial base is and our shipyards are really foundational to our readiness in the long term, in the big picture. That's been challenging for us. Submarines are complicated machines, and they require a pretty high degree of technical care and feeding, so to speak, maintenance and repair. And some of that is dry docked and extended maintenance periods. And so we have some submarines right now that should be on the field that are not, and we need to catch up with that. There's a lot of things that are being done within the Naval Sea Systems Command organization and within the submarine force to get through that bow wave that we have right now in terms of kind of how we think about risk, how we're designing and planning maintenance, and then there's a technology piece of it too. Some of the inspections that we used to do are very manually intensive, and if we can get a small robot in the ballast tank to do an inspection instead of, a couple guys with a micrometer or and a pencil, that is, moving us forward. So there's a kind of all hands on deck effort right now to get after that maintenance piece. And again, that's probably in the grand scheme, that's our biggest challenge with readiness. The other thing is capacity. So as you look at the Russians have always been, very high capability in their submarine force. That's something when the Soviet Union fell, they continued to invest in their undersea forces. And so they're pretty capable. We certainly continue to have an advantage. The Chinese, in my early days, started out as a coastal navy, and they have advanced rapidly in capacity to a blue water navy now. And they continue to build out, significant amount of force structure, numbers of submarines. They're also working every day to close that gap in terms of quieting and other things, just like we are working to extend it. So we are clearly in competition, but it is busier. As I look at COs, commanding officers that are deploying now, we're asking them to do more just because there's a more, the Western Pacific is busier than it was 10 years ago or more when I was a CO, for example.
Yeah, so, you talked about the Western Pacific being busy. I think it'd be interesting for our audience to hear about the AUKUS agreement and how certainly that's had a big impact on San Diego defense community already from both the military and the industry side, and certainly is part of the strategy to engage in the Western Pacific. Could you share what that's about?
Yes, thanks. So I'm very involved in AUKUS. It's a Australia, UK, US agreement that will ultimately result in the Australians replacing their Collins-class diesel-electric submarines with nuclear-powered submarines using US technology. We already share that and have since the 50s with the British. And those submarines will be based in Western Australia near Perth. HMAS Stirling is the base there. That is a significant lift for the Australians to build up the infrastructure to maintain and repair nuclear-powered submarines. And then ultimately they'll work with the British and us to design an AUKUS-class submarine. But in the near term, we have increased our port visits in Australia. Every year we've sent a Virginia-class submarine to Stirling to do maintenance. 2 years ago, it was with a submarine tender that was able to help. Last year, we sent a submarine without a tender, so it was just a submarine maintenance period, and we flew folks out from Pearl Harbor, as well as Australians that had been training, and we were able to do some really fundamental type maintenance and setting conditions and stewardship events, and we'll continue to build on that. the pathway is one where we start to stand up over the next couple of years a maintenance activity there, a submarine squadron, a U.S. submarine squadron. We would ultimately station submarines there, U.S. submarines, and then gradually that would transition over to Australian submarines as they purchase some of the Virginia class from us. That's the overall arc of AUKUS. But I visited Sterling several times, both in this job and in my last job, where I was the Theater Undersea Warfare Commander in Japan. And you can see the progress being made at the base there.
Well, it was really interesting to me. I saw a video of an integrated crew of Aussies and Americans, UK. That must be really an interesting evolution to integrate those.
It is. It's and it's going very well. The shipyard here has about 200 civilians who are working for Australia, who are learning, as I said, to maintain and repair Virginia-class submarines. And that'll be part of the workforce that then goes back. And then we have nearly 200 officers and sailors who are in the U.S. submarine force training pipeline. So for an officer, for example, they go through our nuclear power school, through our prototype, which is like a practical hands-on operation of a nuclear propulsion plant. They go through some tactical training, and then they come to a submarine. Most of the crews here in Pearl Harbor have Australians assigned as part of the crew, and they've really integrated quite nicely. Many of them have submarine experience already, so they bring kind of an interesting way of doing things, and there's some learning on both sides there, as you might imagine. And then some of them are coming from different parts of the military, or we're starting to get folks that just came directly in. But yeah, it's I'm surrounded by it here in Pearl Harbor for sure.
My first PCS, when I came back to stateside, we were so stressed out. Everything was just thrown at us. And I wish I could just go back and tell past me, like, hey, it's going to be fine. Go with the flow.
So speaking of the Aussies, what other, from a submarine force standpoint, what other foreign navies in the Western Pacific do we engage with and collaborate with?
So, our allies and partners are really an important part of countering that capacity challenge that I mentioned earlier and how busy it's getting in the Western Pacific. For the last couple years ago, I lived and worked in Japan. So we're very close with the Japanese, very close with the Australians. We interoperate with them. We're able to talk to each other, exchange tactics and things, both on the submarine side, but also on the, I'll call it the anti-submarine side. So think theater, anti-submarine warfare, where we're maybe prosecuting another submarine or training to do so. The South Koreans, all of the countries that have, there's about at least a dozen countries that have submarines over there that we have a relationship with. And it scales. At a minimum, we need to deconflict operating areas so that we don't run into each other, for safety. And so there's a number of agreements on how we do that. The next level is information and intelligence sharing, and it gets all the way up to interoperability. And in some cases, I would describe it as interchangeability. We exercise together, train against each other, et cetera. So there's a really great community in the undersea in the Western Pacific out there.
So I'm going to ask a question that Drew's going to be concerned about.
Yes.
How's the chow? How's the chow aboard boats?
I'm very concerned about that.
It's it's fantastic. I'll have to get you out on a submarine actually from Point Loma, and you'll see what I mean. There's only one galley. If you're familiar with Navy ships, so this is very different than an aircraft carrier. And so the seamen that just reported last week all the way to the commanding officer are eating the exact same food. And my hypothesis is that raises the level. Also, as I told you, it's a small community, so the cooks get very immediate feedback, good or bad, and there's a kind of an ownership piece of that and a commitment to their fellow submariners to do well. So the food is really good. When you're underway, typically Friday or Saturday is burger day, pizza night probably on a Saturday. So yeah, it's we're not eating MREs.
No, I've seen some of this. I'm just fascinated by the submariners and submarine life, and been watching a lot of that on YouTube. And that's exactly what I expect the answer would be. The food is just absolutely barn none. It's just phenomenal on this. I'm Drew Schlossberg of Cloudcast Media and co-host of Mission San Diego Military podcast series. Generously sponsored by American Military University, a leader in educating our military and their families. Excuse me. My co-host is David Boone. He's the president and CEO of the San Diego Military Advisory Council. So honored to have with us Admiral Chris Cavanaugh, Commander, Submarine Force, U.S. Pacific Fleet. And David and I asked this question of many of the folks that are the flags and all that business is, obviously, with the change in technology, the up in technology, you guys are competing for some unbelievable talent. And, talk about how important that is.
Yeah. The talent on board our submarines is really impressive. The standards to get into some of these ratings are very high, but we are competing. It's another area where we're competing. We're competing to bring talent in the door, and we're competing to retain that talent because a lot of these skills are very transferable as well. I really truly believe that our crews and our people. And I could extend that to civilian, active, reserve, civilian, and families are asymmetric advantage. We have really thoughtful, impressive young sailors on every one of these submarines. And our culture is such that we value things like forceful backup, individual skills and knowledge. And so we really do expect a lot of ownership from even the most junior sailors, and they're always impressed me in that regard. If they're well trained, they will speak up if they don't think something's right, and we really value that.
I got to tell you something. David doesn't even know this. I've been honored to work with an organization called the Classroom of the Future Foundation and been doing it since 1997. And one of our colleagues worked very closely with the Navy. We just got a $550,000, what we call a submarine grant, and to work with the Navy in getting the students in K through 12 interested in submarines. And it was a 3-year project. We're thinking about re-upping it. So if you ever do make your way back into San Diego, I want to introduce you to the folks that took the lead on this. But I was really impressed with what transpired in teaching these kids about how important submarine life is. And so it was a pretty cool grant. I just wanted to bring that up to you.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a very technical field. So if you think about nuclear propulsion, steam turbines, acoustics through the water, some of the buoyancy, how we mechanical engineering. There's a lot of there's plenty to talk about in a classroom, and plenty to interest students.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
So it would be helpful if you could kind of give people an idea. A person comes off the street, they signed up for the Navy, they go through boot camp, and they raise their hand for the submarine force. What's that pipeline like from the time they finish boot camp to the time they walk aboard a submarine? What's that training pipeline like?
So it depends on what their specialty is or their rating. For a nuclear trained sailor, they go to similar to the officer path that I described earlier. So they go to about 6 months of nuclear power school in Charleston. Then they go to an operational reactor where they get qualified to operate that reactor. It's either at Charleston or at Ballston Spa, New York. And then they report to their submarine and they requalify many of those things. And so then that first year or more ends up being increasingly advanced qualifications. Some of the other ratings, or most of the other ratings, go from boot camp to we have our basic submarine school in Groton, Connecticut, and they'll go there and learn their specialty, and then as well as some submarining, and then report to their submarine. So there's classroom training courses and along the way, but then also a lot of on-the-job training when they get there. Our goal is a day one ready sailor who can step on board and immediately start qualifying, start contributing to the watch bill, and start continuing to move up that ladder of qualifications.
Yeah, Drew, the training they get is phenomenal. And that's why they're in such high demand, both in the Navy and outside. So.
Yeah, I was talking to the Admiral before you got here, David, and mentioning his time spent in Memphis, and I did some graduate work at the University of Mississippi, and actually one of my friends' son is now, I think, a submariner officer, and I've sort of lost track with him. And now you're going to encourage me, and that is good, Rear Admiral Cavanaugh, to give him a call and say, where in the heck is he, these days and stuff. And if I find
let me know if he's in the Pacific Fleet.
I will. No, listen, I'll work with you through Rick on that, and I can't wait to chat with him about it. But it was fascinating when it took him a while to get going through that program. Then he did get accepted to it. I think one of the things that's just so fascinating about what you do, and thank you so much for your service and all the wonderful men and women that work with you on this, is that, and you had sort of talked a little bit about it, China is certainly not slowing down on almost anything, for God's sake, right, in this area, and that's great. You mentioned about the work with the Aussies and all that business. I'm assuming that we are dedicating enough, as we should. Obviously, can use more resources, of course, to the submarines effort and all that business. Maybe you comment on that. Happy with where we're going. We love to have the public support that supports folks what we're doing and other people in the Navy.
Yeah, I think we're moving out quickly on a number of, as I said, different platforms. There's a piece of this that's enabling technology like artificial intelligence, like additive manufacturing. You can imagine how valuable that is on a submarine to be able to make some parts, to keep the ship running. Submarines are challenging. They're expensive, and so and they're complex, and so our goal is to build 2 or more a year, and we're challenged to do that. But again, there's a number of efforts underway to get us up to that speed, and the maintenance. If your listeners don't want to sign up, based on what I just said, you can go to buildsubmarines.com, and there's a number of shipyard and maintenance trades that really support this as well. And so we compete for that talent also throughout the force. One thing, if I could. You mentioned, or as we were talking about some of the training and some of the life on board a submarine, I would just offer one of the things I've really enjoyed is that you get to learn and hone a number of skills. So there's a technical, no matter what you do, there's a technical piece of it, maintaining and understanding your equipment, operating it. There's a tactical piece. Everyone, regardless of your rate, has an understanding of what the ship is doing and a connection to the mission. And so those tactics are a much different kind of a left brain versus right brain perspective. And then you've got small unit leadership. And so we have really great people, great teams, and great leaders that lead them at even down to the divisional level.
So to that point, we talked a lot about hard skills, technical qualifications and training. Could you talk more about the soft skills side, the leadership element? What's the emotion of a crew as they go through a deployment and they bond and they become truly a team. What's the feeling of the crew when they return home, having completed a successful mission? Talk about the soft side of this.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think leadership is really important, and on the officer side, we do a number. Every time you go back to a submarine, you go to a new school, and you kind of advance in that regard. As you know, with the Navy, chief petty officers are a really significant role. When you go from E6 to E7, you change your uniform. You're a chief now, and then a senior chief and a master chief. So that experience base is really important to us as well. As you said, the crew, because they're accountable. You would think that you lock up 150 people in a steel tube and there'd be friction, but really what happens is the opposite, as you inferred. People, you need to get along, and there's just an understanding of that. And because you're so connected to the mission, people really feel a sense of accomplishment and ownership in what their role is, and it's not hard to connect, the junior electrician or the cook or whoever, all the way up to the captain of how they fit into what's really important here. When you get those gold or silver dolphins, you're an expert in every system on the ship. You could combat, flooding or a fire or a hydraulic leak, or these things are rare, by the way, but everybody depends on everyone else in a situation like that. And so it really is and there's, some periods of shared adversity, of course, but it really is a bonding experience, and there's a lot of pride in what you've accomplished. Typically, when you come back from that, people have achieved advanced qualifications. They've just done a lot of really, achieved a lot together, and that's hard to. I'm having trouble describing it, but it's palpable.
You described it very well.
It's palpable for some reason.
The analogy I make is to sports teams. That a team that makes it all the way to the Super Bowl, but it's on steroids when you take a military unit that goes through a long period of time together, gets through some adversity. It takes it to a whole different level. And so for our audience out there, if there's young people that are looking for that kind of experience in their professional lives, you'll find it in the submarine force.
Well, and the Admiral was talking earlier, and David, you and I mention this all the time, the transferable skills, whether you're going to make a career being a submariner or not, are just huge with where we're going in this world, whether it's with AI or whether it's with cyber, who knows, whatever it is. But the absolute DNA of a submariner, and for the most part, many folks in the military, of collaboration and teamwork is bar none. My goodness, heaven forbid we learn how to sit there in this country and world row in the same direction, for God's sake. No pun intended, but maybe pun intended, I don't know. And then when you see what the camaraderie is, especially with submariners, I mean, it is off the charts. But I think before we leave, I do want to ask the Admiral, just fascinated by this story about you were leading an international search and rescue efforts for a missing submarine. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so I had I mentioned the submarine rescue,
right.
Undersea Rescue Command is part of Submarine Squadron 11. So I had taken over at Squadron 11 in August of 2017. And in November, early in my tour, we got a call that the Argentina was missing a submarine. It was overdue and communications and presumed possibly lost. And we got the, after about a day of high level, government to government decision making and cooperation, we got the go ahead to flow our undersea rescue. We had two systems at the time, and we got the order to flow them to Argentina. So I flew down there with a small team. I was at the fleet headquarters. And then a number of other folks were at the port where we loaded out the undersea rescue equipment. Now, the whole story, which we didn't know at the time, was that they had I don't know to this day exactly what happened, but that submarine sunk to the bottom in deep water. It was beyond crush depth. And so we were never able to, there were no survivors, and we were never able to effect a rescue. But we didn't know that initially. And so we were out searching, and it was an international effort. The British were there. Chile was there. The United States, Woods Hole had a ship there that was a survey ship. And so I helped coordinate all of that search effort. So Argentina largely took, Argentine ships, and I took the rest of the international task force, and we coordinated how we searched. We were ultimately unsuccessful, but we did load out the undersea rescue gear on ultimately 2 ships and then a third support ship, and surged them out to that area in the event that we found the submarine and were able to rescue it. We were unable to find it in those 2 weeks, and ultimately it was found a year later by a commercial contractor. There are many stories that flow from this, but I would just tell you it was gut-wrenching to watch. They had 3 submarines, and so the 2 remaining crews who were helping us with the search were very intertwined. The godfather of the child of the other submarine CO, those types of relationships. There's something about submariners internationally. I mean, my wife was affected by this deeply, just this lack of closure and this understanding that what we do is dangerous. And then to have that manifest just really was gut-wrenching. I get a little emotional thinking about it. There's a number of reservists that support the Undersea Rescue Command, and they all just got on planes with the plan to, hopefully we'll get reimbursed, but we're going to go. This is our job. So yeah, it was remarkable. That includes a Master Chief with stage 4 cancer who discontinued treatment, went down there.
You can see the emotion in the Admiral's voice in this. Well, we can't thank you enough, Rear Admiral Chris Cavanaugh, for coming on and chatting with us. David and I always like to end our interviews with what can our listeners do and our viewers do to support your efforts and the efforts of your men and women?
Well, I feel like we are well supported. In San Diego and elsewhere where we have submarine bases, and we're part of the community, and we feel that support from the community. I think submarining is unique in that regard because spouses, for example, we have much less contact. That is where we're still the silent service is, there's much less contact with your spouse. If you're on a mission for 30 days, there's no email going off the ship and things like that. So, those spouses, my hat's off to the families who do that, and my family and many others. So I appreciate the community support. I think it's a really exciting time now in industry and all these enabling technologies that are helping us. I'm working hard to go fast, to do things in parallel, to field those things in a really relevant timeline. So I appreciate all that. And then, if you're interested in being on a submarine or supporting submarines or Navy maintenance in general, there's a lot of ways to do that. And that's serving your country as well. And so I appreciate all those folks, that industrial base. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. David, any final words?
Yeah, to piggyback on the Admiral's comments, if there's anybody in the audience out there that knows someone or has a family member that's even remotely interested in some part of the submarine force, whether that's shipyard operations, maintenance operations, or raising their right hand and putting on a uniform, but you don't know how to do it, you don't know how to reach in, get on our website, sdmac.org, contact me personally, and I'll help you find the connection. So use us as a conduit. If somebody's even remotely interested, as a result of this podcast.
No, I think that is terrific. And promise me, Rear Admiral, if you ever make your way back in San Diego, I would love to introduce you to my colleague in the educational world that worked with the submarine grant. I think he'd be fascinated to meet you, and you'd be able to learn what we're doing with that great grant, if that works for you.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. We've been chatting with Rear Admiral Christopher Cavanaugh, Commander, Submarine Force, U.S. Pacific Fleet. I'm Drew Schlossberg of Cloudcast Media and co-host of Mission San Diego Military, a podcast series generously sponsored by American Military University, a leader in educating our military and their families since 1993. As always, David, it is just wonderful to sit next to you and
it's a pleasure.
To co-host these programs. And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed the interview.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mission San Diego Military, presented by American Military University, an educational leader for active duty military, veterans, and their families. Mission San Diego Military is produced by the San Diego Military Advisory Council in partnership with Cloudcast Media, the national leader in local podcasting. We're sure you learned quite a bit about why San Diego is America's finest military city. Please like, subscribe, and share the show.
Cloudcast Media.